Hey guys, before the video starts, I just wanted to let you all know that I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. Let's try and make this dream a reality. Hello everyone, and welcome back to a critical retrospective. Now, as you all know, Miraculous is a show that is home to a lot of truly hateable characters, and one of those is Lila. And it doesn't seem to be in the way that the creators probably intended. I think she's supposed to be the kind of villain that we love to hate. A character who we weren't cheering for, but was enjoyable to see on screen regardless. But I feel like the response from the majority of the Miraculous fan community was kind of the opposite. I don't think people responded well to Lila's character because it's all too easy to see how she breaks the narrative. The only way for her to have any leverage in the story at all is for all the other characters around her to have IQs lower than -45. And so instead of being invested in her villainous machinations, we're left scratching our heads wondering how she made it this far in her plans to begin with. Lila's whole thing is lying, and yet none of it makes any sense. She tells the most agonizingly brazen lies that are so easy to disprove, and yet everybody around her just rolls over and takes her word for things. So in this video I'm going to examine Lila's character across all 5 seasons of the show, and see if there really is a good character underneath all of the unpleasantness and contradictions. So without further ado, let's dive into things. Lila only has one appearance in season 1, and that's right at the end in the episode Volpina. She's a new student at school and immediately starts telling extravagant lies about her life, making her very popular with the other students. Lila also managed to convince Alia that she's best friends with Ladybug somehow. Not even a single person who Lila lies to questions the validity of anything that she's saying. I mean, if somebody told me that they knew a celebrity, I would probably take what they're saying with a massive amount of salt. And so Marinette learns that Lila's actually lying in order to get close to Adrien, and so vows to stop her from doing so. Lila and Adrien are in the library, and so Marinette decides to spy on them from afar. And then Lila says that she knows Ladybug to Adrien in order to get close to him and get him interested in her.
I actually happen to be very close friends with Ladybug.
Again, Adrien doesn't even think to fact check this somehow. But I can kind of understand this because maybe he's just so enamored with Ladybug at this point that he doesn't think to question any way to get closer to her. See, that's kind of my point right there. If Lila was a little bit more careful about the lies that she spills to each person, I might be able to understand why they believe her. And then Lila starts getting through to Adrien, and Adrien becomes kind of interested in Lila because of this Ladybug lie. This infuriates Marinette enough to transform into Ladybug in order to debunk all of Lila's lies.
When did I save your life again, Lila? I don't recall. Never!
That's a bit harsh.
So Lila ends up ruining her chances of being with Adrien because Ladybug exposed her. And I personally feel like this was way overboard on Marinette's part. I agree that Lila needed to be exposed for her lies, but I don't think this was the right way to do it. I mean, Lila is literally crying from this humiliation. I feel like Marinette probably shouldn't have abused her Ladybug miraculous powers and gone to confront Lila privately. That way Lila doesn't develop a grudge against Ladybug, because Marinette would have been the one to calmly confront her about these lies. And now Lila despises Ladybug for this, which is an honestly interesting idea. At the time that Volpina aired, Lila was the only character who actually hated Ladybug besides Hawkmoth, and so she was in a very unique position. However, I wish that Lila's hatred of Ladybug was built on a little bit more than just Ladybug humiliated her in front of her crush. And while I do believe that Ladybug humiliating Lila is a reason to dislike her, I don't think it's a good enough reason to hold a long-term grudge against her. Remember, Lila's hatred for Ladybug lasts for seasons, and she conspires with Hawkmoth multiple times in order to destroy Ladybug for such a petty reason. Honestly, by season 3, somebody should have just sat Lila down and told her.
You gotta get over it, man.
However, this is Lila's first episode, and so I can forgive the writers for being so brief. After all, this is season 1. There's plenty of time for the writers to give Lila some more development in the future. Keep that in mind for later, okay? So what else is there to Lila in season 1? Well, her akumatized form, Volpina. Volpina pretends that she's a fox superhero in order to become Ladybug and Cat Noir's ally. That way she can ambush them when they least expect it. She was the only villain in season 1 who pulled a stunt like this, and it made her very interesting and unique. And yes, while I dislike Lila's long-term grudge against Ladybug in retrospect, at the time this scene at the end of Volpina was really cool.
Forget it, Ladybug. You were right. We'll never be friends.
And then Hawkmoth implies that he's going to akumatize Lila again. It was so interesting. So overall, while I do think that Lila's character had a little bit of blemishes in season 1, especially considering the fact that everyone just takes her word for things, she was still a very interesting and unique character with plenty of time to pave the way forward in new stories. So, was she able to reach her potential in season 2? Let's find out. Lila doesn't have a lot of screen time in season 2, but she appears in the finale with a very pivotal role. She live streams to the class explaining why she's been absent for the whole season. She's lying and saying that she's actually in a foreign kingdom, and yet somehow the class buys this, but anyway. It's here that we meet Lila's mother. Lila is lying to her and saying that the school is closed because of too many akumatizations. I don't understand how her mother just immediately buys this without bothering to check with the school that she's saying is closed, to check if they actually are closed. It's like that whenever Lila is around, she's secretly emitting some kind of toxins that ruin everybody's brains so that they'll believe anything that she tells them. From the perspective of the audience, Lila's always treading thin ice because of how stupid her lies are. But thankfully that's not really the focus of the season finale in terms of Lila's character. It's more about her being the catalyst for Gabriel's plan to akumatize all of Paris. He deliberately provokes Lila to get angry in order for her to get akumatized by him. And when he's sending out the Akuma, Hawkmoth utters a particular line that I think is pretty interesting, so we should focus on it.
Evil Eye's the one who's been awaiting your return for so long!
This line implies that Lila has been waiting for Hawkmoth to re-akumatize her since her first akumatization in Volpina. This marks the first time that anyone has actually intentionally accepted an Akuma. It feels like that the writers are using Lila as a way to test new ideas. You know, in my opinion, intentional akumatization has always been a very interesting idea to me. Akumatization has always been a form of mind control. It has a way of superseding your mind and your will. Hawkmoth is using his akumatized villains in order to get what he wants. However, in Lila's case, it's the other way around. She is using Hawkmoth in order to achieve her goals. It's a very fun subversion of something we've seen since the very beginning of the show. And it almost makes up for the fact that Lila could just lie about anything and everyone will believe her. Because she does have interesting aspects to her character. It's just a shame that these good character traits drown in an ocean of stupid lies. All Lila's mother has to do is call the school or just go outside, go to the school, see the students going to school and realize, maybe my daughter is lying to me or something.
There he is now, your school principal. Do not answer him! He's been akumatiized too!
Really? Nothing at all? You're just gonna stand there confused? You know, Lila's quite lucky that nobody around her even thinks to question anything. Next thing you know, you're gonna tell me that Lila cutting her hair and changing her clothes is enough to convince people she's a completely different person. Oh, for goodness sake. Gee, it's almost like there's some kind of invisible protective force around Lila that's keeping people from seeing her true nature. And while I lament that her character doesn't really make that much sense, I would say that it has improved since Volpina. We learned more about her home life and more about her personality and her goals. However, so far the show hasn't really given me a lot to work with in terms of analysing her character. I mean, she's appeared in a grand total of 3 episodes so far. Maybe season 3 will give Lila the boost of screen time that she so desperately needs. Season 3 really makes up for Lila's absence in the first 2 seasons of the show. She has a lot more screen time this season and a lot more episodes are dedicated to her. Honestly, it feels like this season is actually Lila's first season. I honestly kind of forgot that she appeared in season 1 and 2. Maybe because the writers have finally started to treat Lila like an important character right from the get-go. Season 3 episode 1, Chameleons, starts with Lila having already wrapped Marinette's class around her little finger. Her lies have caused the entire class to move around seats in order to accommodate her and her comfort. She claims that she wants to sit at the front of the class because of a hearing issue, but really it's just because she wants to sit next to Adrian. However, unlike other Lila lies, I can understand why the class would buy this one. But shouldn't Lila have some kind of medical record stating that she has an ear issue? The students I can believe, since they don't have access to Lila's medical records, nor do they have the authority to do so. But surely Miss Bustier should be able to check Lila's medical records and see she doesn't actually have an ear issue. Could she just not be bothered to check? Maybe maybe Lila claimed that her dog just ate the medical records or something and so they can no longer be accessed. But now we're just getting off topic. The point is that Marinette's had enough of Lila lying to everybody around her and so decides to confront her. Which doesn't end well, to say the least. Stop lying to people, it's hurting everyone around you. Yeah, right. How about I make you lose all your friends and ruin your life instead?
That's a bit harsh.
And thus starts Marinette and Lila's season-long rivalry. And after this point, they kind of stop really focusing on Lila's hatred of Ladybug and instead her hatred of Marinette. Which, honestly, kind of makes her a bit too similar to Chloe in my eyes. I touched on this a little bit in my Chloe video, but Lila and Chloe have become such similar characters. Both of them hate Marinette now, and so they both want to destroy her life. The only difference is that Lila's a little bit more subtle about this. I personally feel like it would have been better if Lila hated Ladybug but befriended Marinette, and then Chloe would have liked Ladybug but hated Marinette. That way it's easier to spot the difference with these two characters. So now Lila's only really focused on ruining Marinette's reputation, which will only work if Marinette's classmates believe everything Lila says, which fortunately for her, they do. Take for instance the 24th episode of season 3, titled Ladybug. Lila's whole thing this episode is framing Marinette for a series of crimes that she did not commit. That way she could get Marinette expelled. She frames Marinette for stealing answers to a test, and yet only a few people step up to defend her, including Adrian, but for some reason the class is still skeptical. On their way to the principal's office, Marinette is framed by Lila again, but this time she's accused of pushing Lila down the stairs. And how is Lila able to achieve such a master plan? Yeah, Lila walks to the bottom of the staircase and starts yelling. And somehow, that's enough to convince everybody that Lila actually hurt her leg when falling down the stairs. Lie on the ground and yell your heart out.
Wait, that's it? That's all it takes?
Not only that, but Lila decides to take things up a notch and says Marinette stole her necklace, before escorting everybody to the proof that she has. Hey, would you look at that? Lila's walking just fine. I guess her leg just miraculously healed. And so Marinette opens her locker and it looks like Lila's necklace wasn't there, pointing to the truth that Marinette was the perpetrator after all. So then she gets immediately expelled from school, which is pretty lucky for Lila. So then Alia decides to help Marinette find out who really did this.
If you're so quick to accuse Lila, you might just overlook another potential baddie.
Okay, several issues here. Okay, the whole stealing the necklace and stealing the test answers thing, I can kind of believe Alia thinking somebody else was behind that. But the only two people that were there when Lila accused Marinette of pushing her down the stairs were Marinette and Lila. If it wasn't Marinette who did it, then surely Lila was lying about it and faked the whole thing. You know what? Fine. How about we just go through with Alia's assumption that Lila is innocent in all this? Let's just assume that somebody else, this alleged guilty party, was the one who pushed Lila down the stairs. Then surely either Marinette or Lila or both would say who actually did it. But because Lila accused Marinette instead, that proves that either Lila didn't see who actually pushed her down the stairs, or that Lila lied about it. So maybe Alia could use her critical thinking skills a little bit better and realize that Lila is the perpetrator. But apparently Lila was very sneaky and thorough about not leaving any evidence behind. So how was Lila able to avoid leaving her fingerprints on anything? Was she wearing gloves? Actually, no, she wasn't wearing gloves. So how was she able to get away with this? Where did she get some crazy forensic technology to avoid being detected? Does she have sophisticated technology like that? Or is this some kind of foreshadowing for things to come? At the end of the episode, Adrian stands up to Lila and tells her to find a way to get Marinette back into school. And this is what she does.
And because of this rare disease, sometimes I can't control things I say.
How did they fall for this? This should have been the straw that breaks the camel's back. This should have been the moment that everybody realizes what Lila's really about. But instead, Lila's just allowed to walk away scot-free. I have two issues with this. One, Lila's disease doesn't allow her to be able to control the things that she says. But Marinette still had the test answers in her bag. And Lila still walked to the bottom of the stairs in order to frame Marinette for pushing her. And the necklace was in Marinette's locker. So sure, they buy that Lila can't control what she says, but can she control what she does? Absolutely. Which proves that she framed Marinette on purpose. Second, after the people learn that she can't control what she says because of this disease, why would they ever trust anything she says after this? So now whenever Lila decides to lie in the future, everyone should take that with a grain of salt. Shouldn't they think to themselves, didn't Lila say she has a disease that means she can't control the things she says? Maybe we shouldn't believe her anymore. It doesn't make any sense to me. I honestly think this should have been the episode where Lila gets exposed for who she really is, as this plan is far too brazen for her to not get caught. The writers are desperately trying to make us see Lila as this cunning mastermind who can do no wrong and whose plans will always come to fruition. But this was such a risky plan that I feel like the payoff should have been that Lila gets caught for this. This should have been the point when she gets expelled and discards the Lila Rossi persona and instead moves on to being Cerise like she did in season 5. This should have been the point when it all comes crashing down for her, but fortunately for her, the plot armor is keeping her afloat. And all of these story contrivances are done because Lila is terrible at deceiving people. I mean, obviously in the show that's not the case, but you know what I mean. The show keeps telling us that she's an amazing liar without actually giving us any reason to believe that's true. And the thing is, deceptive characters in media can work, and Lila could work if she was just reworked a little bit. If her lies weren't so obvious, then the audience might have a better time believing the characters believing her. Lila is an example of a deceptive character gone wrong. So I feel like it's important to look at a deceptive character done right in media. So let's move on over to my second favourite show, Lego Ninjago. More specifically, the 8th season, Sons of Garmadon. Fellow fans of Lego Ninjago probably already know which character I'm going to talk about, but to those who don't, there's going to be heavy spoilers for this season. So those of you who don't want to get spoiled, I suggest that you click away now, and please go watch season 8. It's on Netflix, it's absolutely amazing. Okay, it's time to talk about this deceptive character. The former princess of Ninjago, Harumi. Harumi is one of my favourite characters and favourite villains in all of fiction. And one of the reasons why is because she's such an effective twist villain. She's pretty much the opposite of Lila. Her deceptions are always subtle and easy to understand and believe. Now I really have to keep myself in check here because my brother can attest to how long I like to gush about Harumi for. So let's just start from the beginning of the season. This season is basically about this weird gang called the Sons of Garmadon who want to bring back Lloyd's father, Lord Garmadon, from the dead. And in order to do this, they need 3 Oni masks. The Mask of Vengeance, the Mask of Deception, and the Mask of Hatred. And it's the ninja's job to try and stop the Sons of Garmadon from getting to all of the Oni masks, while also protecting Harumi from the Sons of Garmadon because they set fire to her palace. The first 6 episodes of Sons of Garmadon really endear us to the relationship between Harumi and Lloyd as they grow closer. They end up bonding over their shared losses as well. And what makes Harumi such an amazing twist villain is that the things she's lying about aren't unreasonable to believe. The only thing that she really lies about is her true nature and the fact that she actually hates Lloyd and the ninja instead of liking them and caring about them. And she specifically tries to get close to Lloyd in order to manipulate him into getting her the 3rd Oni mask. Unlike Lila, her deceptions make sense because she doesn't put a target on her back by being too brazen about her manipulations. She's calculated and methodical with her methods, and she almost never tries to draw any attention to herself, good or bad. That is, until the episode Game of Masks. Harumi tries to take the Mask of Hatred but is unable to, and so beckons Lloyd to do so, stating that only someone of Oni blood can take the mask. And since Lloyd is part Oni, he's able to take the mask successfully. But this is when the episode takes a turn and directly contrasts against the episode Ladybug and Miraculous. Lloyd asks Harumi how she knew that this was the case, using the logic that if Harumi really is just the Princess of Ninjago, then she shouldn't know anything about the Oni masks. And this gets the wheels turning in Lloyd's head as he realizes that Harumi is definitely the leader of the Sons of Garmadon and the one behind everything terrible that's happened. And this scene in the Oni temple right here is absolutely phenomenal. Is the best thing I've ever seen in any show or movie ever. I can't show the clip here because of copyright reasons, but as I said before, it's all on Netflix. Go watch it. And this is where the differences between Lila and Harumi as deceptive characters really start to show themselves. In Ladybug, Alia said that Lila didn't leave any fingerprints behind or any evidence behind when that is so obviously clearly not the case. However, Harumi was so careful that it just took one verbal slip up for her to get caught by Lloyd. But other than that, she managed to cover her tracks pretty well. And that's exactly what Lila was missing. Don't have her just be a liar, but an actual deceiver. Allow her to actually manipulate the circumstances of the situation to make herself seem innocent in a way that's reasonable and accurate to life, just like Harumi does. But I think I'll stop there. Harumi deserves her own video after all. And if I'm not careful, this video will turn from why Lila is the worst villain ever created to why Harumi is one of the best villains ever created. And yes, while Lila's actions don't make too much sense in season 3, I mean, there's always season 4, right? If there's one thing I've learned being a fan of Miraculous Ladybug, it's that good things come to those who wait. So I'm sure that season Season 4 will shed some light onto Lila's character and her backstory in a way that will make her actions make more sense in hindsight. So how about we find out just how true that statement is?
Hey, look, over there! Ah, shoot! It's a mirage.
My goodness, what happened to Lila in Season 4? Seriously, where did she go? After all of the screen time and supposed development that Lila got in Season 3, you'd think that they'd develop on her character in the following season. But no. For the majority of Season 4, Lila only makes cameo appearances as a non-speaking background character. She barely did anything of note this season. And when people were kind of wondering where Lila was for almost all of Season 4, the writers and the showrunners were kind of saying, oh, she'll be there in the season finale. So we were all expecting something. So what exactly does she do in the season finale that's quite noteworthy and really makes up for her absence for most of Season 4?
Nothing.
She's excited to go on the trip around the world with Adrian in Risk, and then in Strike Back she talks to Felix for a grand total of 2 seconds, and then at the end she smirks at Natalie coughing. And that's it! Seriously, for a finale that was partially advertised as Lila's big return, Felix did more in this finale than she did. The official Miraculous Ladybug channel actually puts out compilations for the characters, and for the Lila Season 4 compilation, almost all of the clips they used are from the season finale. That's what little they have to work with, and that's what little I have to work with. Honestly, at this point, Season 3 is the season where Lila made the most appearances, and yet she only appeared in about 7. The fact that I can count the amount of speaking appearances Lila has in Season 4 on one hand is pretty sad. And her absence in Season 4 really opened my eyes to the fact that the writers never really utilized her to her full potential. She shows up, causes some chaos, and then leaves for a disproportionately large amount of time. Did they spend so much time trying to make Chloe look irredeemable that they forgot they already had that kind of villain ready to go? At the point at which her arc is gone, there was far too much Chloe in Season 4. I mean, the episode Gabriel Agrest really felt like it was going to be heavily Lila oriented, but it just kind of wasn't. Felix was introduced 2 seasons later than Lila was, and yet he has significantly more development than her. There were plenty of filler episodes in Season 4 that could have been replaced with Lila-centric stories. Honestly, I genuinely can't say anything more about Lila in Season 4. Let's just move on to Season 5 and hope and pray that she actually gets something of note. You know, according to my recent research, it's widely accepted by the philosophical community that it's about time Lila got some development. Sure, it took us 5 seasons to get here, but I'm not gonna look a gift horse in the mouth. In my humble opinion, Lila is the most interesting she's ever been in Season 5. For the first time in 6,000 years, Lila's actually using her brain. Sure, she still has a bunch of annoying lies that people still buy, but other than that, she's actually got some pretty smart plans, especially towards the tail end of the season. Towards the start of Season 5, she doesn't have that many major appearances. She tells a few lies here and there, tries to manipulate Chloe in Deflagration, but other than that, doesn't really do much. That is until the episode Perfection. Lila manipulates Kagami into turning against Marinette by believing that Marinette doesn't see her as a real friend. Lila's manipulation tactics in this episode are kind of okay, I suppose. She just gives Kagami a friendship test and says, if you tick all the boxes, that means Marinette's not your real friend. I mean, anything's better than Lila just lying about the fact that she has an uncle who works for Nintendo who let her play Tears of the Kingdom earlier. However, the things that Lila wrote down for the friendship test could easily be interpreted as misunderstandings or coincidences. I feel like Lila would probably improve at her manipulation skills if she didn't just flat out tell lies, but rather twisted the truth to her purposes. I mean, I can still enjoy Perfection just fine, but let's just say Lila's not exactly the best part of this episode. Now, the episode Protection is a completely different story. I'd argue that this is one of Lila's best showings, and it's precisely because of how Lila's manipulation skills actually work this episode. She's trying to turn Kagami against Marinette again, but she doesn't do that by just lying this time. Instead, she makes statements about Marinette's actual actions and recontextualizes them. She implores Kagami to take note of the fact that Marinette only acts completely inept around Adrian, saying that Marinette's only acting this way in order to manipulate her friends into helping her. And you know why I like this version of Lila so much? Because she she's acting like and reminds me of the undisputed best villain in all of media, Harumi. Both characters manipulate people by twisting the truth. A much more effective manipulation tactic in my eyes, as it's a lot easier to see why someone would believe that, as there are elements of truth to what they're saying. And this is what Lila's character really should have been. Focus more on her manipulator side than her lying to get attention side. That way the audience can actually believe that the characters believe her, because her lies aren't so outlandish that anyone taking them at face value would be a supreme idiot. Take Harumi for instance. Sure, she's still a liar at the end of the day, but there's more truth to her manipulation than you might see at first. One of the ways Harumi tries to get close to Lloyd is by opening up about her parents, stating that she's still not over the loss as she still sees them in her dreams. Which if you see season 8, you'll know is true. I can't go into all of it right now because I want to save it for a future video, so for now you're just gonna have to trust me. If Lila had more moments like this, then it would probably make her a better manipulator. Now, this is something important I need to talk about. We learn at the end of episode 18 Emotion that Lila knows that Gabriel is Monarch. Not a bad idea. However, what makes this kind of stupid is that we never find out how she found out. When did she find out? You'd think that these basic questions would be answered, and yet they never are. I wonder if the writers actually have in their minds when Lila found out. I mean, if you know, then maybe your audience should know too. And I know it seems like I'm nitpicking a bit here, but I don't think I am. Lila was only able to get as far as she could with her plan in the final 6 episodes of the season because she knew who Monarch was. Side note, Lila just picked up the circle lenses from the table to shove into her eyes. Calm down, Lila, those was just on the table. You could get an eye infection, jeez. But back on track. If we don't know how she was able to come up with these plans, then it better be a really good plan so it can be engaging on its own. So, is it? Well, I'd say so. First, let's talk about the episode Revelation. Lila feels slighted by Gabriel not appreciating her or her help and so decides to get back at him. In this episode, there are 2 sides to Lila's manipulation skills. During the second half of the episode, she's actually pretty good. But that first half... ugh. The whole thing is predicated on Lila becoming the new class representative. She does this to try and drag Marinette's reputation through the mud once again. And then when Marinette and Adrian try to explain to their friends about Lila's evilness, they just brush it off. And then Marinette says, we can't talk about it openly, Lila is too good a liar. No, she isn't. You guys are just terrible at picking up basic untruths for some reason whenever you're around her. It completely detaches the audience from the story because it's very easy to see that the writers are trying too hard. But didn't I say that the second half of this episode was actually pretty good in terms of Lila's character? I did, didn't I? Lila gets akumatized by Monarch into hoaxer. To put it simply, she can mind control people by telling them lies. She doesn't actually need a power to do that, but whatever. And this is where Lila becomes quite interesting. Hoaxer manages to mind control Natalie into giving away all of Gabriel's secrets. And Gabriel is none the wiser. As you probably know by now, I appreciate it when the writers actually make Lila do smart things, because it makes them seem more competent in my eyes. The episode after this kind of takes a turn though. The episode Confrontation, which immediately follows Revelation, goes back to everyone just believing Lila for the sake of it. She sabotages everyone's career form so that they don't go to the schools they want to, in order to pin everything on Marinette. You know, no sane person would actually believe any of this, but as we've established, Marinette's friends are clueless when it comes to Lila. Why don't they just rewrite this episode to make Lila more similar to how she was in Protection? Lila's biggest mistake was letting Chloe and Sabrina in on her true nature. Because Sabrina's moral compass was going to get to her eventually, Lila should have known that. Sabrina loudly states that Lila was the one who did this, and yet everyone just stays there confused. Hey guys, maybe think for yourselves for once. Lila's been dragging you on like this for over 2 seasons. You'd think at this point you might be able to put 2 and 2 together. But then at the end of the episode, Lila ends up ratting herself out trying to threaten Sabrina. But then it's revealed that they were being watched the whole time. It only took 5 whole seasons to get here, but whatever. So that's it now, Lila's done for. This is the comeuppance people have been waiting for since her inception. Well yes, but actually no. It turns out that Lila wasn't actually that bothered about getting found out because she has a whole separate identity. As a matter of fact, she has at least 3. This is the most interesting Lila has ever been. Well, I guess I should be calling her Cerise, since that's her new identity. Honestly, I'm still coming to terms with the fact that Lila was never real. But I'm honestly not that bothered, because Cerise is far more engaging. I love seeing her plan come together through her various disguises, and nobody knows that she's actually still up and about. Marinette thinks she just defeated a petty liar, but she has no idea how deep this rabbit hole goes. She even has a lair of her own in the catacombs. And while this is a very cool idea, it does have its issues. One, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, come on, how was Lila able to effortlessly juggle 3 separate identities? How does she have all of this crazy stuff in her lair? How does she have a lair to begin with? Is this where Lila was for almost the entirety of season 4? And most importantly of all, who is she really? Who is her real identity? Does she even have one? These are all questions that I think we should get answers to at some point. But because we're only finding out about this now, this late into the show's lifespan, we don't have any time to find these things out. Here's how I would do this. Have her get exposed in the episode Ladybug from season 3. That should be when she ditches her Lila persona and moves on to being Cerise. And then for the entirety of season 4, she can plot and scheme in the shadows in her lair. There. Now we've added more layers to Lila's backstory earlier, and given her something to do during season 4. Not only that, but we've made her character a bit more interesting and dynamic, moving on to something fresher as she was getting a bit stale towards the end of season 3. But other than that, I welcome this change in her character. It's funny how she gained about 500 brain cells as soon as she ditched the Lila persona. Honestly, being Lila was holding her back. Her end goal is to get the Butterfly Miraculous, and she does this by planning her schemes far, far in advance. I remember watching these episodes and thinking, wow, Lila, you could do all of this? Why did it take you 5 seasons to use your brain? Honestly, this kind of makeover reminds me of the kind that Felix had in season 4. In season 3, Felix was just kind of an annoying jerk. But in season 4, he's very intelligent and crafty and kind of on his own in terms of morality. You know, now that I think about it, Lila in season 5 and Felix in season 4 are very similar characters. Both characters know who Monarch is. Both characters plot and scheme in the shadows to obtain one of Monarch's Miraculouses, and they end up doing so by the end of the season. Oh yeah, speaking of which, Lila now has the Butterfly Miraculous by the end of season 5 and is being enrolled in the next school year in Marinette's class, probably under a new identity. Look. I have to admit, I'm pretty scared for this kind of storyline shift in season 6, because I think I can predict what they're going to do. I think they're going to have Lila in her new identity introduced as a new student in the class, and only Marinette will see through the disguise and no one will believe her for another 5 seasons. I sincerely hope that this isn't the case. I hope that she just doesn't say anything. I hope she just lays low in the class, just biding her time. No extravagant lies about her life to get her caught out by Marinette, because I think we've seen enough of that. These new revelations that we learned about from Lila towards the tail end of season 5 have provided new feeding grounds for some good stories. And I'd hate to see them throw it all away just so they can return to the status quo where Alia looks at Lila for guidance. I really want the writers to take advantage of the new character they've cultivated for Lila, because after season 5, she definitely has the potential to be the most unique character in the show. So yeah, Lila was pretty mixed in season 5. She had some good moments and some bad moments. But I'd say this was Lila's best season in terms of her character. And I hope they do more interesting things with her now that she's going to be the main antagonist in season 6 and beyond. But I guess only time will tell. Overall, I feel like Lila is a character with a lot of potential that goes wasted. And I think that the issue is that the writers don't utilize her enough. She desperately needs more screen time in order for her motivations to be more fleshed out. To put it simply, we needed more. And the fact of the matter is that we didn't know that much about Lila until late season 5. And so we're left with all these flaws and holes in her story that should have been filled in earlier. And so we're left with a hollow character who doesn't seem worthy of all the spotlight she's getting all of a sudden. And so the plot bends over backwards in order to keep Lila as a major threat. And I'm not really sure about how I feel about her being the main antagonist of the show from this point forward, as it doesn't really feel like she's done much to earn that title. However, I could be wrong, and maybe she'll go on to succeed Gabriel as a worthy villain for the show. Until then, I'm going to think about what could have been with her character, and remember characters who did her archetype way better. Thank you all so much for watching this video. You know, even though the old Miraculous World Paris video got taken down, I'd like to celebrate that it reached 16,000 views. That is the highest amount that any video of mine has ever gotten, and I could not be happier. Thank you all so much. It means the world to me. It's a really amazing experience to know that many people saw the video and that many people heard me talk about it. And I'm thankful to each and every one of you who decided to give that video a watch and subscribe. This has been a critical retrospective, and watch Lego Ninjago Season 8 Sons of Garmadon. It's absolutely amazing. It won't disappoint you. Harumi is the best villain.